had talked about it a year ago. So I asked Jimmy what the chances were of that happening. And then he suggested we have a meeting because as some of you may or may not remember, at the last in-person director meeting we had, I was one of those adamantly against the summer tryouts. And since that time, I've had a change of heart for a couple reasons. But just so you know, I'm not coming at you in any way saying it's my decision or we got to go through this. This is totally up to everybody. It's going to come down to a vote. We got to do what's best for our region. But I want to get everybody's thoughts. Couple things that I wanted to say about what I've discovered. It seems that more and more things are happening earlier and earlier. And like for registrations for your bigger tournaments. And I know that doesn't affect some region or some clubs that just have like regional teams or, you know, maybe play in the region. They start opening things in October 1st. One was even open sometime in September, so that you had to just guess what you were going to have, what level you're going to get in. And when you go to someone like, I'll use Bluegrass, for example, once you get a spot, you can't just say, oh, I'll drop out and move to another division. That doesn't happen. It's full in 24 hours and like people on waiting lists. And then also we've had a problem with, I don't know how to say this, just a lot of pressure, a whole bunch of pressure on these kids during their high school season. And I know, I'm just speaking for my club alone, that it really wears on the girls and the parents. And every time they go to a, you know, high school game or whatever, and they see someone trying to pressure them, come to my club, blah, blah, blah. And this would alleviate all of that. You would still be able to shop around in different clubs, because according to what I sent you in the notes, we might tweak it a little bit because that was, I think, 2 years ago. If we did it, it would be, so I think it's almost a 30-day window where people could shop around and you can actually speak to people. I think you can't talk to them, I think, until July 1st. I mean, I'm not looking at the dates right now, but they're all on that paper. And after that, anyone is free game, but it's also a much shorter time period that people have to, how can I say, like break the rules, you know, because I guess where I'm going with it is probably because of my position where I'm at with the board right now. It's opened my eyes to a lot of things going on across the country. And I know Jimmy's been seeing it for a couple of years, but I'm seeing it now myself when I travel to different places, that people really are lifting the restrictions on tryouts. And it's kind of just like you are selling your product, and people are going to stay with you if you're selling a good product. And if not, you know, and then there's always, no matter what we do, this is how I feel personally, again, no matter what we do, there's always going to be the shady people that are going to try and buck the system. And I myself am tired of fighting them. And I just want to get your thoughts. I'm not going to take up the whole meeting. I don't want this to be a super long meeting, but I really just want to hear everybody's thoughts, pros and cons, because I like in those notes, there was also a list of pros and cons in there. And I really do want to hear, because, you know, we'll go back to the board and we'll talk about it, but this would never go down to a board vote. This would be a director vote. This would not be something that 5 people would choose for the region. So I do want to hear your thoughts so we could discuss it as a board. And then, you know, it would come down to a vote whenever. Vote for it this year, postpone until next year, whatever.
Before
yeah, go ahead.
Anyone makes a comment, I'm going to try to share the screen and just show you the survey that we sent out. Here it is here. Give me just a second. And see if I can get to it. Okay, this is really the primary, I hope everybody can see that. This is the primary question, really. What's your current thoughts on summer tryouts? So if I can move this over. 11, it's literally split 50-50. 11 people said we're in favor, 12 said we are against, and 10 said we don't care. So that was the question. If you want to look at it, that's 33 out of almost 50 clubs.
6, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. I don't think everybody can talk at once, but there's a little thing you can raise your hand. But if anybody's got comments, go ahead and start, and then we'll try to get everybody in. Questions, put them in the chat room. Anyone? Bill, you're out there. I know you've been a strong opponent of not. If you can unmute yourself and possibly make some comments, would be good.
We're trying not to be first and to let everybody speak. So I was looking through and, you know, trying to pull up. Bill's here, by the way. We're sitting next to each other. And this we sent the last time, sort of this discussion.
Jessica, you're not coming through very clearly. I don't know if you want to move away
Yes, one of you may need to cut your microphone off. It's coming through very not quality at all.
Is this better?
Talk into your phone.
Is this better?
Yeah.
A little bit.
So I pulled up the document that we sent out when we originally had this discussion to try to, you know, revisit what some of those main points were. And I think to your comment, the core issue is in our mind not necessarily the tryout policy, but it's the designing of rules and policies and the enforcement of rules and policies. So, you know, we were kind of at a broad stroke against making tryout changes to combat people that are breaking rules, because they're just going to break the new rules. And if there's recruiting going on during high school season, we're just going to shift it to a different time of year. It's going to happen while we're finishing our previous club seasons. We're not going to get rid of those problems. We're just going to move them. And it seemed to us that we were going to be introducing a lot of cons. So I'm not sure about the rest of the clubs on the call, but like I know for us, half of our coaches that we have head coaching right now, we didn't have until September, October. Some of them weren't even in town. Some of them didn't, you know what their grad school schedules were, or their nursing schedules. They had no idea whether or not they were going to be able to commit to coach in the fall. So we would be trying to get players to commit to teams without knowing who their coach is, or what gym time we have available, and then potentially having to go back to these families and tell them that we can't give them what we promised we were going to give them. Some of the other issues, you know, around here in Charleston, again, I'm not sure about the rest of the state. In the 14 and under, the middle school ages, there's a tremendous number of players who decide to play club after they don't make a middle school team, or they don't make the middle school team they wanted because they realize how stiff the competition is. The high school players that choose not to play club anymore because they didn't make their high school team. There's just a lot of decisions that are made based upon what happens as a result of school tryouts. The 11s and 12s, the youngest ages, don't even know what volleyball is or what club is when the season starts. And then you also get into the issue that there are a lot of kids who are playing for school programs that are run by parent volunteers through the rec department. That's the vast majority. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of our club kids, at least in this area, are playing for volunteer coaches through the rec department, which is great, but it's not actual real qualified coaching. So they depend during the summer and the fall to be able to access camps and clinics and training sessions through qualified club programs, you know, to be able to progress their game. So I'm not sure how that would all work if they're already committed to a team and to a program. Those are just some of the things that were on the document that we sent out. We're happy to send that out again, to re-forward that to you, Sue.
Okay.
Somebody else.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Valerie Long with SC War Eagles here in Clover, which is on the border of Charlotte and Carolina region. And Carolina region did their tryouts early last year in Charlotte. And that seems to always be a bit of our competition over there from the border, because Charlotte's so close. So we were behind the 8 ball. Not only that, but Gaston Galaxy also did theirs. And they are 30 minutes from Lake Wiley. So we were behind, like from the beginning. So I get that point, that to get along with everybody else around me, it would really help to at least be able to sign my returning players, like knowing they're going to come back. Like that was our idea last year. Like go ahead, and the ones who are returning and want to stay in our club and stay on the team, they wouldn't have that pressure from across the border, you know, go over the bridge and go, you know, try out for someone else. So, you know, we had, not only did the parents feel the pressure and of making a decision for CUVC and CJV without even being able to try out for us. So it was a huge mess to deal with from the very beginning for us. Not only was COVID a problem, but we had also those other clubs all around us. And it was just Southern Legacy, us, and Palmetto Rage that are all, you know, we were dealing with the same thing because we're all in York County right here. So that's why I voted neutral, because there are advantages to both sides, one or the other. But I would like, at very minimum, us to be able to sign our own players that have been with us and want to return to us, so that they don't have the pressure of feeling like, oh my goodness, is War Eagles even going to have 16s? Are we going to have 18s? Because this year I don't have any 15s or 16s. So I have a huge, or 17s, I'm sorry, 16s or 17s. I have a huge gap just because they panicked and went and signed with other clubs. So I could be in that same boat if we don't catch on board, but if I could at least sign mine to move up, that will at least help people in that area.
Folks, let me give and I don't really have an opinion currently, but I will give you some facts. The best I can tell, there's 40 regions in the United States and Hawaii and Alaska. 18 of those, I believe, have gone to some form of early tryouts. Summer, late summer, early fall. Most of those are the summer tryouts, and pretty much from what I can gather, they are saying, hey clubs, you can try out when you want to, but the region, and I think this is pretty much uniform across all of them, the region would not recognize that player until actually the time that we register, which is September. So that's something. What I would like to suggest that we can send an email out is actually, let's get the concerns in writing from everybody so that we can at least determine, is this a real concern? Is there something that we can do by changing some rules to correct it, or is there too many to even consider? I can tell you personally, this is just me personally, doing it nearly 30 years now. I am extremely, extremely tired of trying to be the police of recruiting violations and complaints of tryout dates and conflicts and everything that you guys know that comes in. Because of all of them that come in, let's say 100 come in, there's probably only 2 that says, okay, I'll step up to the plate and I'll get a parent to file a complaint, because most of them won't. They don't want to burn a bridge. So, but it does, those 100 that come in take up a tremendous amount of time trying to do investigation with nothing come out of it. So I'd like to get out of the rule business and get into what's best for clubs, you know, something like that. So there is a lot to consider. Jessica and Bill from MVP mentioned a good bit of that. What I could hear of you, Jessica, anyway. And there's a few other questions. Jonathan asked, what's going to happen if an athlete gets injured during school? Really no different than if they get hurt by the time tryouts start. I mean, your tryouts in and the season begins. You have to deal with stuff like that. And then Tom says, I saw summer tryout dates showed 14U in the middle of August. I'm not quite sure. That may have been, Sue helped me. I didn't even read that proposal. It went back to 2020, but that might have been something that was proposed at the time. I would say throw all that out the window, and even if it's considered, we need to hear from everybody and determine what's best for Palmetto region.
We also, sorry to interrupt, but we also have the option of doing just older tryouts early and having the middle school after their season because of, you know, the reasons that Jessica brought up. That's also, we can do a hybrid approach.
Middle school and youngers, you're exactly right. Yeah, that again, that's just where we need to identify stuff. Janine said, was there a club last year that said regardless they were doing, yes, if a club is with JVA or AAU, they obviously have the right to say, and this is happening. Let me give you an example. And one of the regions, I want to think North Texas, they had quite a few JVA teams, and one of them decided, or several of them decided they were going to do summer tryouts, which pretty much forced the hand of everybody, because otherwise you lose trying to get Sally Stud that's trying out earlier might sign early. Now keep in mind, like I said earlier, almost every region, if it's USAV, will not recognize the player who's tried out with a club until the fall, from a associated with a club standpoint. Tom, I think for Myrtle Beach, if we had a solid team at different age groups, why can't we ask for commitments now? That is something Sue just talked about, and that is being done in a number of regions where the players with your club now, they're allowing them to sign early for next year. Not recruiting players, not recruiting new players, but just returning or players that are in your club right now. So that is an option. And somebody else just echoed that. All right, I'll stop. And other questions or comments?
I just forwarded replied, Sue, to your email. I found the attachment that we sent. It's a long Word document, but it has sort of all the summary of all the questions and concerns that we raised last time. And that way people can read through that as a summary.
Okay, thank you.
Jimmy, I think for smaller clubs that it would be detrimental to a point in that we could get our returning players to sign, but we can't guarantee what kind of level of team we can put together. And our community is very big on that. We also have to compete with the Southern region, with Savannah. They're a much bigger club because they're a much bigger area. And so I think for the smaller clubs that don't have more than one age or one team per age group, I think it's going to hurt us. I think we're going to really struggle with one, getting the commitment, and two, people adhering to the commitment. I mean, they could say they're going to commit to a team, but they could change their mind in 3 or 4 months. So I think that might be an issue as well.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? We'll try to keep this to about 30 or 45 minutes, so we've got a few more minutes. Anybody else that would like to say something? I just
wanted to say to Tina's point, I'm a smaller club too. We only have 8 teams this year. the only thing I find is what Valerie said, we have both sides of the table. Because like what Valerie said, if we have the clubs that decide to do it early, then we're screwed that way too, because they go and take the girls and they don't have them anyway. So I don't know. We're just trying to work through this because I do know some of the, I know for a fact some of the teams that play mostly SAVL and all that are going to go ahead and do their early tryouts. So if we go ahead and wait, you know, we don't have access to those players anyway. So we're just trying to figure it out, honestly. That's a really good point, though, because it's very valid. I don't know what the answer is.
I do think there's some valid points of consideration of doing a partial compromise of allowing clubs to sign players that are currently with your team, with your club. Honestly, have not thought through it and how it would work out or what the pros and cons would be, but that's a consideration. Who else?
Do you know like what SAVL or other competing, you know, organizations in our area are doing? Because we don't really know what their plan is right now.
I did speak with Corey, who's kind of over SAVL this year, just a few days ago, and he said there's not been a discussion currently, and there's not current plans of going early. They certainly would like to, how can I put it, keep peace and try to work together with everybody. But you know, they obviously have the right to do that. Just don't know how that would look. I mean, I think we'd have to have the majority of our clubs agree to whatever we're going to make a change in for the region to do it.
So Joey, to clarify, just for those that may not know, MVP is a founding member and partner of the SAVL LLC. And so, I mean, obviously we are much smaller compared to Upward and to Grand Strand. But I mean, we are opposed to it, and we are a founding member, partner, owner of the SAVL. Again, so now, I mean, if they do it, or we've not heard of any discussions. There's not been a meeting scheduled to talk about the topic from the standpoint.
Jimmy, I've got a question. Wouldn't a lot of this just be a wash as long as everybody's doing their tryouts at the same time? I mean, if we move it up to, say, the end of July, are we not going to, we're still going to have the same issues then as we would if we have them in October and November. But as long as everybody's doing their tryouts at the same time, it's really not changed a lot, other than soon as school seasons end, we can go ahead and start practicing, as opposed to having 3 or 4 weeks worth of tryouts before we can start to actually practice our teams. Am I missing something there?
No, I think you've got a point, and that would be, there's obviously a lot of other considerations, but that certainly in the simplest form seems to be the case. I honestly, guys, I haven't thought about it a lot, so I would want to talk to some regions in detail of what they faced the first year, second year, what problems they faced. Was it worth it? Would they go back and do it again? And my recommendation is, before we make a final decision as a region, that allow me time to actually, I sent a quick email out a few days ago and got 4 or 5 responses, and I know a lot of them are just wide open right now, so it's hard to respond and do anything because they're in the middle of season.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris James with Crossfire. So my concern is if we roll it back during the summer, how is this going to affect, like Larry said, you can go ahead and begin practicing. Is this going to drive the pricing up of what some clubs are going to have to start charging if you begin practicing earlier during the summer? You know, you're going to get started earlier, and then you're going to have to find gym space for smaller clubs like us. We've got 6 teams this year. We're not that big. We've struggled to have gym space this year due to, you know, some doors being shut for outside events. Some churches and rec centers have not allowed us to come in. And I feel like it's going to drive the price cost up for smaller clubs like us to try to compete with larger clubs that may have dedicated facilities they have more control over.
I may have misunderstood Larry. I don't know that he wasn't speaking about, rather than if we started it, we typically start late October with the young tryouts and then go into maybe mid-November. So instead of using those times that clubs lease space to do tryouts, is they would just have that time for practices earlier. I would agree with you, Chris. I don't know that how many clubs could do it, but if they, I mean, even if they have a facility, they've got to hire coaches to do it. So it's going to come down to a price comparison. You know, I was speaking with a smaller club this week, and they're in competition with larger clubs surrounding them. And I said, well, you know, a lot of times parents still make decisions, and they're looking at price versus other things too. But, you know, at some point, is a parent going to pay $3,000, or will they accept $1,000 and get X number of practices a week and go to these number of tournaments? You know, so there's a lot to be said. You know, a lot of points to consider.
I do know in that document that was sent out with the notes, I can't remember which one it was, but one of those contracts that was written out for dates, they had said that after tryouts, it was a dead period until the school season was over and nobody had practices. You made your teams, and that's the part that was the hassle with the pressure and everything. And they made their teams, and then they went all through school ball with nobody doing anything, and then started their practices. So really all you did was get the pressure of tryouts over with, and practice time didn't change. It also allowed for clubs to do their camps and clinics that everybody does over the summer. And nobody has to be worried about, oh, I'm supposed to be at club practice when you're supposed to also be at school practice. So I thought that was a really good option, where you could just, basically all we would do is get the tryout done, have your high school season, let the girls be let alone. And then we would start up, like Jimmy said, you could start up right when we would normally start our tryout process, which is I think the second week of November for the older girls. That's when we would just start practice. Because I do agree that practicing through the school season and over the summer it's counter to what we're trying to do, to give the girls a break and take the pressure away. It's too much pressure and too much volleyball. So if we were to go about it, I'd like to see us do some sort of version of that, where we're just doing the tryout and then we just go hit the floor running in November with the teams already made.
But what happens to the people that make the team? They go to high school or middle school, they get hurt, they get burnt out, they hate their coach, they get put in a bad position, they don't like it, and then they just say, I'm gone, I'm not doing this. And you might have enough of them on a team, teams could fall apart.
I agree, that's a possibility, but it's kind of like what we run into with school anyway. When you think you have certain people coming to tryouts, I know I have it all the time. I think I have almost a full team and they have a terrible coach and 6 of my players don't come try out. So I guess it just be a matter. I mean, there's, like Jimmy said, they're not recognized by the region to September. So I think there would always be a window. We'd have to work this out where, you know, come November, you could have, you know, if you have openings, I don't know how we could work that out. Hey, we have a 1-day tryout, we need middle hitters or whatever, because that is definitely a possibility. I just don't see that would be a problem. I think the main purpose is to relieve the kids of the stress of the recruiting all through the August, September, October area. And it just stresses them out during high school. And I do agree that that could happen, but I think we could make adjustments and have later tryouts, or for people that are just moving to your area, have them have a chance to make a team. You know, for any teams that are looking for someone, we could advertise the teams and when their tryouts would be to fill those spots.
Yeah, so we could actually do a tryout in the summer, get the team set as much as possible, and then after high school, still have that window like we do now for 8, 9, 10 days or 7 days for makeup tryouts, and it could still be open. If you've got a kid that didn't try out, played her high school season, and then decides she wants to play, then she's out shopping on the open market to anybody having makeup tryouts.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to do it. Clubs could advertise, like some clubs might put up, say, we're full. And then other ones might say, hey, we have 2 spots on an 18s, we have 1 on a 15s, and then go according to that.
I mean, in South Carolina, I don't see that our population density is large enough to be able to support a model without a situation where you're going to have, 4 kids on your team that are power level, 3 kids that are club, and then now you've brought in 2 kids that just played their first year of high school and are really developmental. We're gonna, I could see potentially in an area like a big city with millions of people, but I just don't see how that would work in with the population density that we have in the state.
Well, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding you, but I think the main part of the tryout is in the summer, and the hope is to get a full team. We're talking about if someone gets injured, someone moves, and you need to fill a roster spot, that kind of thing. For it would just be strictly a makeup tryout for those positions. Like, I think the goal, if we did do something like this, would be, hey, let's get the teams made, and then have that little window, like Chris talked about, that if clubs do have spots to fill, they have an opportunity to do so. And then we start our practices right when we would normally start, which is, I guess, the 3rd week of November, because that 2nd week is tryouts. Unless I'm misunderstanding you.
Guys, I'm on suggest we can discuss this tremendously, but I'm going to suggest that I'll create a Google Docs file shared with all the clubs. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, let's go into there and put your comments, pros or cons. And before we do this, what I would like to ask, I'd just like to see a straw poll in the chat room. Put your club and just say how you feel about signing early current members for the 2021-22 season. Yes, I'm in favor. No, I'm not. I'm undecided. This is strictly just a straw poll for my knowledge only. So before you get off, do that. But anyway, I'll create a Google Docs. Let's all put the questions you have, the concerns you have, the positives that you see or the negatives you see. And it may be something, once we get through a couple or 3 weeks of all the information, that'll give me some time to try to get some information from regions that are doing this, that have been through everything that people are asking and how they handle it. So we'll try to do that. And then at least we'll consider it or put it up for a vote in the early spring. Lance wrote tonight, said he wasn't going to be able to get on, so he's running the tournament this weekend. He did make a valid point, is that this has been a crazy year. And from all I can tell, we're probably going to go into the summer still with COVID. So it's possible that will affect us and possibly affect getting facilities, just like we're having problems now. We've got, I think I remember 6 or 7 clubs that have been operating for years that did not operate this year because they simply could not get a facility. So that might be something that we use to postpone this decision and discussion into 22. But I will open that, Sue, unless you've got other suggestions or comments. I think we do that for everybody to put in their questions, comments, pros and cons, and then let's do another survey or question voting
I did want to add one thing. As the opposite end of the spectrum, if we decide not to do early tryouts, I think it needs to be discussed. Are we still going to go with the tryout? When this is just, for later discussion. Are we going with the tryout window, or are we just going to let everybody do what they want? Because it's really become, like Jimmy said, it's really been hard to control, and it's a pain in the butt. So that's something we just need to talk about and figure out what we're going to do if we do fall tryouts.
Yeah, certainly. All right, folks, again, if you would, stick in your chat about how you feel about that. And then before you get off, otherwise, I will get a Google Docs created the next day or so and get it out to everybody. And this is recorded. I can send you this recording, send it out to the other clubs that didn't get on, and we'll try to get everybody's feedback where everybody can read the other comments. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for doing it. And we'll talk soon. I do see light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys, hopefully, if you're still in and you've made your comment, about 30 more seconds, you haven't put your chat in, I'll save it and send it out to everybody.